Hey everyone, welcome to the PPAS annual membership meeting and state of the industry presentation. I'm Cassandra Franz, I'm the executive director for PPAS. On your screen, you see Tom Carpenter, Mark Korskadden, and Paul Bellantone. This meeting is being recorded. At 10 o'clock, we are going to go through our business meeting. That'll go from 10 to 10:15. At 10:15, Paul Bellantone will give a presentation, and then we will have some Q&A at the end. As Paul's speaking, if you've got questions, please type them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of that presentation. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mark Korskadden.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Korskadden with Durasi Marketing. I'm the current president of PPAS. Thank you for taking the time to join us for the annual PPAS membership meeting and state of the industry presentation. Before we get to the state of industry, we're going to take care of a few business items. So it's 10:01, and I'd like to call the November 18th, 2020 PPAS annual business meeting to order. Discussions of topics such as regulating prices or quantities of goods or services, allocating customers or territories, hindering or limiting a competitor or potential competitor's operations, or otherwise unreasonable restraining business activity are strictly prohibited at any PPAS meeting. As such discussion and topics are prohibited by PPAS policy and may result in violations of antitrust laws. At this time, I'd like to recognize our PPAS past presidents. Your willingness to share both your time and your talent by volunteering with PPAS says a lot about each of you. Your willingness to give selflessly to help others speaks to both your strength and quality of character. When you volunteer, you're making a commitment to share that most precious of resources, your time. The fruits of your labor make a tangible impact, of course, but perhaps it's the fact that you're willing to share your time and talent to lend a helping hand and to show kindness and caring that makes the greatest difference in the lives of individuals who are touched by your generosity. While I know you choose to volunteer selflessly and without expectation of being recognized or rewarded, today I wish to do just that. I want to let you know just how much your dedication is appreciated. Words cannot adequately express the gratitude that I or the board wish to convey. Please know that your volunteerism is recognized, valued, and cherished. Your great generosity has had a profound and lasting impact on PPAS, so thank you. And at this time, I'd like to personally thank all our members who have volunteered for board, committee, or other activities. Without your generosity, the association would not be able to continue to serve the membership needs. At this time, I want to introduce the board. Taylor Anderson from Sanmar is vice president. Jared Thorndike, Sage, immediate past president. Tom Carpenter, MAS, Phi Promo, secretary and treasurer. Sarah Thomas, American Solutions for Business director. Mike McMillan, Right Line director. Megan Hernandez, Logo Mark director. Parker Stevens, T-shirt Tycoon director. Chad Rizzo, Showdown Displays director. And Deanna Becker, Peak Promotions director. In addition to the board, I would also like to thank and recognize Stephen Meyer, MAS, Gemini Line, who's also our PPS RAC delegate. Brian Jolin, Jolin Promo. Deanna Zimmer, Bag Makers. John Bagwell from Bagwell Marketing. And Carol Gauger from ETS Express. I also want to take a moment to thank all of those that have sponsored events this year or have volunteered your time. Without your continued support, we wouldn't be able to exist, so thank you. You're very much appreciated. And we look forward to your continued support in 2021. But last, but certainly not least, I want to thank Cassandra Franz for our executive director, who is the true heart and soul behind the engine that we call PPAS. She's been a rock star in a year without concerts. So, and she's had the pleasure of keeping me in line, which is no small task. So 2020 has been an interesting year, to say the least. I was told my presidency was going to be a cookie cutter year. Not so much. And we were posed to have our most profitable year for many years, I should say. But COVID took the toll on PPAS as it did all our businesses. We've had to hit the pause button and reevaluate what we're doing and navigate these uncharted waters together. We have 4 amazing board members rolling off this year, but with that in mind, your amazing PPS board of directors unanimously agreed that the best thing they could do for the association was to provide stability. So they all put their hats back into the ring and are ready to continue to lead the way as well to begin to rebound and recover together. So please allow me to introduce our new and returning board members, class of 2023. Tom Carpenter, MAS, Phi Promo, Tommy Lewis, Halo, Mike McMillan, Rightline USA, Sarah Thomas, American Solutions for Business, and Jared Thorndike, Sage. The 2021 Executive Committee, Mark Korskadden, myself, the President, Taylor Anderson, Vice President, Tom Carpenter, Treasurer and Secretary, and Jared Thorndike, immediate past President. So we won't bore you with our financial information, but at this time, but it's always available upon request. So if you desire to take a look at that, let us know. We'll be happy to send it to you. So new business. Membership renewals are due January 1st. The association needs your support, especially after last year. We really need it more than ever. So whatever you can do to help us out, to talk to distributors and suppliers to join would be greatly appreciated. For just 34 cents a day, you get advocacy and education, strong leadership in your board of directors, scholarships for local industry families, networking and social events, discounts on products and services. Some changes you'll see next year. Typically, we plan our calendar out on a yearly basis. That didn't quite work out last year. So we're gonna do it by quarter. And the first thing we're gonna do is have a Love of Our Industry show on March 3rd. And we'll get more information on that later. But at this time, I move that we adjourn at 10:07. Do I have a second?
Yep, I will second that for you.
All right, Tom Carpenter seconded. Thanks, Tom. At this time, can you do me the honor, Tom, of introducing our distinguished guest?
Yes, and it really is an honor. Let me introduce Paul Ballantone, CAE. He's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Promotional Products Association International. That is the not-for-profit association for our over $25 billion industry. Paul's passion for member success and his commitment to the excellence of PPAI have propelled them into becoming an internationally recognized, high-achieving organization serving more than 15,000 corporate members worldwide. He is committed to the advancement of our industry through visibility, viability, credibility, and community. Now, many of you have seen the announcement yesterday that effective the end of March 2021, Paul will be stepping away from his position as the CEO of PPAI. Paul, personally, I wanted to let you know that when I saw the announcement yesterday, my thought went to a conversation I had with Steve Schlegel. And Steve told me, he said, Tom, one thing you need to remember is that the positions that we hold in this industry are positions we move through and not to. Our goal is to make sure that when we move through them, that we leave a better place behind and that we bring people along and move them forward in their journey. I think you're an excellent example of that, and I want to thank you for that. It's been fun working with you as a volunteer over these many years. And while we are going to miss your openness, your attitude as a servant leader, and your sense of humor, we all do wish you the very best going forward into your next adventure. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Ballantone, CAE.
So how do you follow that? Pretty interesting. Interesting times for all of us. I'm gonna give you the unrehearsed part of this. I know that Cassandra said that this is being taped, so I'm going to be careful, but I'm going to be candid about things. So this is really the first public opportunity I have to speak to anybody since yesterday's announcement. As I've looked at my own career personally, I've committed to myself that I will not make COVID a reason for anything, but that I do have to acknowledge that it's part of my story, my career, my life, my family, and how we adjust to it and how we propel ourselves through it and away from it, I really think are going to be defining moments for us. So as you look at this pandemic and as you look at how it's affected your businesses and your families and your friendships and your ability to socialize, remember that it's not our mission, it's not who we are, it's part of our story that we get to determine how we move from the other side of it. And I use that, you know, as I think about the association and I think about myself, and I want to own my part of this story. I was not going to be dictated by it, but I've been saying something to staff for a while, is I'm not going to let a good pandemic go to waste. You know, we have only so many opportunities to make really transitional moves in our careers and in our lives. And I think for me personally, this is one of those times. I'm going to continue to go off. I'm going to riff for a couple of minutes because Mark left me a couple more minutes than I thought that I would have. This is a really special time for regional associations, and I want you to think about it. Hopefully, in these terms, maybe in this context. I was meeting with a multi-line rep in Ohio for promotional products work week, Kyle McGovern. I don't know how many of you know him, but it was really my first time to spend time with him. And I heard him give a presentation, and he said, you know, regional associations where competitors become friends and friends become family. And that struck me. At a certain level, our whole industry is that way. At least the volunteer community and the social side of our industry is so different than anything I've ever worked in, because competitors are sharing time together at meetings like this, working events, they become friends. And then friends, I'm watching friends in this industry, they treat each other like family. And I think that's really special. So that's one part that I think regionals have an advantage over, because it's very hard to do that at the national level. On the other side of it, and I'll use Expo as an example, you know, we could do everything exactly right at the Expo in Vegas if we were to run an in-person event. But at the end of the day, people were making decisions that go far beyond what happens within that convention center. So if you think about it, that, you know, everybody would need to get in an Uber, and then they'd need to go to an airport, and then they'd need to get on an airplane, and then they'd need to go to stay at a hotel, and then they need to find their way from the hotel over to the convention center. And those are all elements outside of our control. At PPAI, we can create a vacuum sealed facility, but people still needed to get there and get back. And each of those are independent decisions that an attendee or an exhibitor would have to make. But when I look at it from the regional standpoint, and I've watched so many regionals do this successfully, bring local people together. They're meeting in restaurants, you know, and on patios. They're running events in parking lots where people just get in their own car in the morning, then they're at an outside venue and they're visiting with friends and colleagues. And I really think this has the opportunity. I think the regional community has the opportunity to write their own COVID story about how they've brought new meaning and value to their membership during very difficult times. So at the end of the presentation, I close up talking about how we're a scrappy and entrepreneurial industry, and I think that regionals are the same. Mark, I love what you said about Cassandra. She's a rock star in a year that with no concerts. Very difficult to do that, and I think I could speak for Cassandra. Is we're doing things that we don't love doing right now. It's not the things that got us into association management, but I think she's doing a really terrific job for y'all, and you're fortunate to have her. I'm fortunate to call her a friend and colleague. This time I'm going to jump into the formal presentation, if I know how to do this. So hang on one second. Can you see my screen yet, Mark?
Yes.
You see my presentation?
Correct.
Okay. Now tell me, do you still see it?
I do.
And let me do one more thing. Now, do you see it as a full screen?
I don't, but Cassandra, I might be in a different permission than the public. So
how about now?
no,
Either way,
it was actually full. It was actually full the way you had it before.
Okay.
It's just you have the person panes.
There we go.
There you go.
So
okay.
I'm gonna talk to you about, now this is not the happiest presentation that I've ever given, and you can imagine why. The last 3 months have been fairly devastating for our industry. I should even say it, the last 3 quarters, it's really been we actually had a fairly good first quarter, because if you think about it, we didn't get affected by COVID until the second half of March. Prior to that, it was more of a supplier issue, supply chain getting product out of China. But it really didn't affect our buyers' use of promotional products until the second half of the first quarter, really March and beyond. And I'll share some data that I got from our colleagues and partners up at Sage that help illustrate how it's affected our industry. So we've been doing quarterly sales volume surveys, COVID related, where we've asked members very specifically about their experience through this, and you'll see how different companies have weathered this or are weathering this differently. So on the supplier side, the respondents that you're going to see in here, this is how it broke up. It's 35% of them, relatively small supplier companies, and then as you move larger into the supplier side, that number drops off, but that's very reflective of the industry we work in. Same thing on the distributor side. Actually, about 85% of the distributors in our industry report less than $500,000 in sales. So when you see these numbers that 86% of the respondents to this are writing less than 2.5 million, it's truly reflective of the industry that we work in. So first thing that we looked at was quarter by quarter, by approximately what percentage did your overall sales change from quarter 1 to quarter 3 in 2019 versus 2020. And you could see that in the first quarter, we had companies significantly increasing their business, 35%, 32%. But we also saw where the decrease started coming in. So these are companies that that did well in the first quarter, but they saw that decrease in the last couple of weeks. And this isn't 100% statistically accurate. I think people report based on what they're feeling. They didn't report this like on the day the first quarter ended. So if they responded 2 weeks into the second quarter, it has some of that that hangover effect to it. But you could see that the industry has decreased significantly over the first 3 quarters. As it stands right now, about 78% for distributors at the end of the third quarter, 80% for suppliers. Now, what we did in this is we asked our members to separate blank PPE from decorated PPE. And there's a reason for that, because the blank PPE, I don't think is going to be a long-term solution for our industry. I don't. And you know what? It shouldn't be. There are more effective ways for blank product to get to market than through our channel, because there's really no value add. The only value add we have at that point is procurement. But I do think that decorated PPE is going to be in our industry the same way hand sanitizer was, whether or not it's specifically related to a pandemic. There will be a lot of PPE products that move into our industry because people will be more conscious of it. So when we asked first half to second half of this year, so again, remember we asked this in the third quarter, do you expect your business to increase, decrease, or stay the same? On the supplier side, it was balanced. 40% said that they expected it to increase, 38% said they expected it to decrease, and you have that 20% in the business. This is in the middle. This is very rare that we actually see suppliers and distributors writing so closely in terms of the projections they're making about their business from quarter to quarter. Because even though distributors kind of drive the supplier sales, not every supplier shares in that equally. But there's been one thing in this industry over this pandemic that I've noticed is that there's certainly a level of shared pain. It's affecting things equally. So I asked you, I mentioned to you about PPE, and that's one of the biggest questions that I've gotten about through the pandemic is, where do I see PPE? I don't know that PPE on the supplier side was shared as equally as it was on the distributor side. And when you look at it through the second quarter, April through June, and I think I have a slide coming up that'll show the third quarter, 76% of suppliers sold less than 10% of their business in PPE. So that means only 24% of our suppliers actually sold PPE, more than 10% of their business. I think there's a number of suppliers that sold a lot and a lot of suppliers that sold very, very little or none at all. On the distributor side, clearly more evenly distributed based on who your customers were. And when you look at that none number, the NONE number, really only 17% of distributors didn't sell PPE. And from what I hear from those distributors, it's because they just didn't want to get into that business. They recognize the complications that could potentially come from it. And a lot of them actually sent their customers to other sources. So here's the blank versus decorated. So you could see where the number between blank and decorated on the distributor side are much more closely aligned than the numbers on the supplier side. So you can see that the shift is changing from blank to decorated. And I again, optimistic about this. I think it needs to be part of our industry. We will see PPE in our industry for years to come, like all other categories. I don't see it being a big play for blank. That product is finding its own way into the marketplace. And here's an interesting slide that I asked our friends at Sage to produce, and I actually just got these from Blake Bozeman yesterday morning. So I considered the start of the pandemic in April and, up through October. So in April 2019, a year ago, April, there were 0 products in the promotional products and 0 PPE products in the top 10 searches, the search results in April a year ago. But when we look at April 22, just April 2020, just 2 weeks into the pandemic, 4 out of 10 of the top searches were PPE products. And there's another stat, I didn't show it on this here, but when you look at that drop from 26 million total searches, that's buyer searches and distributor searches, dropping down to 7, that's almost a 70, to think that we had a 75% drop in searches. And then of that, 4 out of 10 of those searches, top searches, were PPE. You could tell the shift that our industry went through. As we go back to now, as we look toward October 2019, there were 20 million searches in our industry. None of them were PPE. And now you look at October 2020, and you see that there are about 10 million searches, a little bit under 10, and only one of them is PPE. That to me is incredibly encouraging. So think about it, 25%, 75% drop off, and 4 out of 10 were PPE in April. Now we only have a 50% drop off. So that's doubled. I'm sorry, it's halved, and only 1 out of 10 is PPE. So to me, that's a comeback. And I think we're going to continue to see that. I would imagine that if we went to Sage today, we would still see masks there, but I would guarantee that 75 or 80% of those mask searches are for decorated orders, not blank orders. So very optimistic about the trend that we're starting to see. I'll give you an example on this. We have in Texas, like Florida, we don't acknowledge COVID. We pretend it's not here, and I could tell that because we have more cases in Texas right now than we had in April and May and June during that first spike. Yet I have traffic on the way to the office. Where back in April, May, and June, I used to make it to the office in 5 minutes. I think COVID, for at least the time being in our state, in this community, is just part of our life. And I think that PPE will become part of our life, and we will become a global society based on healthcare. I'll give it another example here. After 2001, after 9/11, we became an entire global society based on the eradication of terrorism, right? And it changed our lives, and our industry was part of that change. Everything from the signage to the ways that we gave out things at concerts and festivals and distributed products at meetings. Our industry was part of the comeback after 9/11. It was part of the story. It was part of the rebound. I think after COVID, we will be a global society that's rooted in the eradication of disease and viruses. And I think our industries has a very large part to play in that. We'll be part of the rebound. We will be part of the comeback. And look at the signage that we're seeing in restaurants and everywhere we go, the plexiglass, all of those different industries that we were been able to be part of. It makes me very optimistic for the future of our industry. This was a new slide question that we decided to ask DSO, like, are your customers paying their bills? And by and large, we've maintained where we needed to be. The pandemic has not affected so much payments from suppliers. On the distributor side, very, very consistent with what we've seen. 55, 53, 31 to 60 days is 42, 31. So we're not seeing a direct correlation between pandemic and our customers, whether it's customers and distributors or buyers, ability to pay their bills. Order count. This is the story that we've been dealing with. Distributors and suppliers had about a 9, 10, 11% increase quarter 2020 to 2019. But look at the drop on the decrease in the total order count. I don't share this with you because misery loves company, and we want to know that everybody else is hasn't fared as well as we'd like to, but more to say this is our baseline from this point forward. As we compare, we will watch the trend click off of the red and move into the green. And I believe that, and we're starting to see that even 2 weeks into November. Total order size. So the first one was order count. Order size is a little bit different. This is by sales volume. And you can see that red number is actually less than the order count. And I think it's because we're doing value added selling. We're doing packaging, we're doing drop shipping, we're doing kitting, and those create more valuable revenue opportunities for our companies. What a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to reestablish value to our customers, whether those are distributors or buyers. Thought this was interesting. Are you meeting in person with distributors in their offices? And we have in their offices. And distributors, are you meeting with salespeople or customers in their offices? So it seems like distributors are a little bit more aggressive than our suppliers in face-to-face meetings. And again, distributors have a broader base of buyers than suppliers do. So, think of it as almost B2B within our industry, but in a certain way B2C as distributors are dealing with their customers, because they're dealing with customers in all different industries. Some of them may be, restaurants and healthcare and all different types of financial that are having different experiences through COVID. We asked this question, and I think, Cassandra, as you talk about your membership, and Mark, as you talk about membership, we asked if COVID will impact their plan to renew memberships later this year. So the answer, 9% on distributors, is consistent with what we have in retention anyway. We actually have a 90% retention, and I'll tell you, through the first 10 months of the pandemic, we've dropped about 2 points on retention, which we thought we would drop about 30 points. But if you go back to how we started this, 86% of our members are probably paying $495 for membership, which includes a Power to Sage agreement. Really, if you're going to be in business, you need to have that as a foundation for your business, to be able to have the technology and support to run your business. We know that. On the supplier side, these numbers are also encouraging because we generally run about an 85% retention with suppliers. So the numbers aren't too far off. What we need to focus on, and I think what PPAS needs to focus on, is that unsure line. That's where, if I have any concern about membership, it's not those people who have certainty, it's those people who are not feeling certain at this time. And I'll give you another slide I have coming up on that. So we asked a question about Expo Direct to You, which is our virtual event. Notice I didn't say not live. It's in person and it's virtual. And I'll just share with you a thought that we've had here throughout the pandemic is that words matter. And the words that we share with our customers matter. So I think about everywhere I go, I see the term social distancing. And I'm thinking, man, I wish they wouldn't use that term because it's really physical distancing. What we're doing is trying to maintain and drive social engagement, but how do we do it in a way that's responsible and healthy? So there is a difference between physical distancing and social distancing. Let's physically distance, but become socially engaged. And I think that's the role of PPAI and Sage at this point as our direct to you partners and PPAS. The other thing that we've been very cautious about our words is live versus in-person versus virtual. These virtual shows that we're all running, this meeting that we're running, while it used to be in person, it's still live. And there's something meaningful about that. So you'll hear us talk about virtual or in person, but not the fact that it's not live. So we asked the question, has COVID-19 has impacted the organization to hold in-person trade shows? We asked if distributors and suppliers, if they would participate in a virtual live event. 42% yes, distributors on the yes side. The no is 28 and 15. I would tell you that that's actually very encouraging for us because less than 50% of our members actually get on a plane and fly to the expo. So the fact that 50% of 15,000, 16,000 member distributors are going to participate in Expo Direct to You, I find very encouraging. And the fact that they're actually going to bring more people is also encouraging. Again, my concern is the unsure line, and that's the part that we don't know how to compare Expo registration this year to live Expo registration from last year because you don't have to get on a plane, you don't have to register in advance. People can register for the third day of Expo Direct to You, the morning of the third day of Expo Direct to You, and you don't do that when you're flying to Las Vegas. We asked people about staffing changes. Have they made any staffing changes as a result of the pandemic? You could see that suppliers made more staffing changes than distributors did. Makes perfect sense. They're running factories. The factories, if they don't have the orders coming through, they're going to work for those factory workers and those office workers to be doing. On the distributor side, in an industry that's so heavy on independent contractors, we're an industry of we're hunter-gatherers and we eat what we kill. And a distributor doesn't have to lay off independent contractor salespeople. They kind of find their own levels. They don't have cost involved in it unless the person's making a sale, and we all want that cost. I'm going to breathe for a second. What are some of the positive outcomes for your business from COVID-19? Found this to be an interesting question because suppliers, by and large, spent more time working on the infrastructure of their organizations. Except for their sales staff, most of their people worked in an office environment, and then they had to reposition to get them to be working remotely. Where on the distributor side, so many of us have been working remotely along the way over the years. So suppliers worked on internal infrastructure, distributors worked on more education and spending time marketing and improving their company's image. They invested in their branding and purpose and vision of their organizations. Next, this to me not a happy slide. Thinking of the next 6 to 12 months, how confident do you feel about the business viability? This was, 33%, 37% feel very confident about their business. We have a number of people who are fairly or extremely worried, but to me, I take that red line and I add it to the undecided. 67% of companies are fairly or extremely worried or undecided to me, which is kind of the same. I'm almost as concerned about the undecided as I am about the red. And I think that's the pandemic will be a shaper of our industry and what our industry looks like in the future. We cannot get around that. We asked which 3 industries out of 17 listed do you believe will generate the most sales for our industry in the next 6 to 12 months? You could see this when we asked, and this is both suppliers and distributors. We asked it at the end of Q2. We asked it at the end of Q3. Relatively consistent. There wasn't change within the list, but where companies fell within the list changed a little bit, but fairly consistent. It's health and medical, it's education, there's infrastructure builds, finance and banking, government. If you're banking on food and beverage, might be a little bit different. The other kind of wild card in this is we know where product is being sold, the industries they're selling into. What we know less of, but have some certainty, is where are those products being distributed. So even though massive amounts of product are being sold into these industries, so much of them were being distributed at live events. Probably 40% of all promotional products distributed are at some live in-person event. And I think that that's going to drive the sales across all of these industries. So yes, there's, if we can be selling product into healthy industries, but if the industries aren't in places where they distribute products, that makes for a different story. And I want to leave you before we go into the Q&A with this final slide, and it's really been my observations over the last 9 or 10 months, for whatever it's worth, 862 days of 2020. It's a never-ending year. I feel like we're in a year of dog years. Everything seems to be going fast, but taking longer to get there. And it's a weird situation. One, we are an opportunistic, entrepreneurial, and scrappy industry, and we are resilient and adaptable and sustainable industry. I know that this is all our first pandemic, but it's not our industry's first pandemic. There was a pandemic in the early 1900s. We've been around for hundreds of years. The association's been around since 1903. There's been a pandemic since then. We made it through. We made it through that. We made it through 2 world wars, Great Depression, recession, terrorist attacks. We have always been part of the solution to every one of these challenges. We have always been part of the comeback. We've always looked different, but we've always been here and we've always been relevant. And I don't suspect that will change for us. I'm confident in that. Second thing, I've learned is that planning and preparing are two very different things. Planning is a luxury when you know what the outcome with some certainty is going to be. Preparing is when you don't have that certainty, and you become a little bit more flexible. We've overused the word nimble and pivoting, but you approach things a little bit differently. You approach things with 2 options or 3 options, and not just the go forward plan. Not a bad thing anyway, but just recognize that they are 2 different things. To me, when I'm asked what's the most common trait or the commonality of those companies that have been successful through the pandemic, and I've broken it up into companies that have earned their customers' permission and confidence are doing better than those that were just transactional and in the procurement business. And I'll tell you why. So many companies are working from home right now. And well, let me position it a different way. You used to get the call because the company is running a golf tournament or a company outing with their employees, and they want the product delivered to their offices and they're going to distribute it. But now we're in a situation where those employees aren't in the office, and it's those distributors that have permission and confidence-based relationships that are saying to their customers, how are you recognizing and rewarding and engaging your employees who are not in your office anymore? You used to do it constantly, but now you're not doing it. How are you doing that? And then talking to them about how to go about doing that. Same thing, they're talking to their customers that used to run live events and are saying, well, just because you're not running a live event, how are you keeping in contact with your customers and your future customers? That's a permission-based conversation, especially when you're asking these customers to give you employees and customers home addresses and personal information so that that product can get there. So if you don't have those relationships with your customers, this is the perfect time to start building permission and confidence with your customers. From an association standpoint, and even in your business, what you stop doing is as important as what you choose to continue to do. We are not wasting this pandemic. We are going to stop doing some things as an association that really were for the benefit of very few members that may have been timely for at some period that we felt we wanted to do it. But now it's a little bit different. We're choosing the timeless. And finally, last but not least, I am an introvert at heart. And I know that most of you have seen me in my extrovert mode. But when this pandemic first started, I was like, oh, I was made for this. I am so wired for staying at home and doing things by phone and Zoom. And then I realized that I really miss people, which means that I really miss this industry and what it was and what it has been. And I will take that with me. The relationships have become more important to me than ever before. So with that, I'm going to figure out how to stop doing this, Cassandra. Are we off the presentation now?
No, let me see if I can grab it back from you. Hang on just one second.
Well, we want it gone. We don't need the presentation up there right now. So any questions that I can answer?
Yes, we've got questions in the chat for you. If you guys have questions, please type them in the chat and we will get them to Paul as best we can.
Yep.
The first question I have for you, Paul, is what was the reasoning behind going to a virtual expo versus a mid-year in-person expo?
So all of there are things that are in our control and things that are outside of our control. So the reason to go virtual in rather than doing Vegas was that every state and every municipality had their own rules around quarantining and what states you can travel to. And every state that we could potentially be traveling people to had, New York just went to, if you're going to New York, you have to have a test 3 days before, you have to show negative, you have to quarantine again. You cannot plan an event as massive as Expo with that type of uncertainty. So it was incumbent on us to make that decision, even though it's not one we wanted to do. And Nevada happens to be one of the most liberal states in terms of travel. People still needed to go back home, and they had families that they didn't want to infect. We actually, and I'll tell you this, we're being recorded here, have dates secured for a mid-year event. Whether we roll with that and announce that, not in Las Vegas either, someplace middle of the country where people could drive, not have to stay in a hotel, do all of those things that we talked about. We have not made a decision on whether or not to do that. And a lot of that will be driven by the pandemic and what we are allowed to do in the cities that we want to do it. So, I mentioned before that everything was like dog years. Every month that goes by, you're able to learn like 5 months in advance what you can and can't do. In March, we thought there was no way we weren't running an event in January. By August, we were questioning whether or not those dates we had in the spring of 2021 were even going to be viable for us. So it's a moving target.
For sure. We understand. All right, next question. Do you think in-person events are going to be postponed indefinitely, or do you expect in-person events to come back once the economy opens up more consistently?
I do think in-person events will make a comeback. They are making a comeback. I attended an in-person event in Ohio at the OPA, who launched our Promotional Products Work Week. They did an absolutely phenomenal, awesome job. People wore masks, they social distanced, they had a couple of different functions in a few different areas where they brought people in groups. They never went over capacity. I do believe that in-person events will come back. I think the local ones will happen sooner than the national ones. It depends how you get there. And I'm encouraged by that. Maybe we'll all be a little bit smarter about our in-person events, going forward. But, I would say that in May, if Cassandra said that she was running a happy hour on a patio at a bar in Las Colinas, I wouldn't have been there. If you were doing it today, I would. We still have pandemic. We still have high numbers. We just are all making more independent choices about how we want to go forward within this.
Yeah, okay. What do you see as the greatest threat to the industry for 2021? And what do you see as the greatest opportunity for 2021?
Well, what a great question. The biggest threat is, I think, is if we continue to muddle along as we have as an economy. We did some scenario planning, as I know the regionals did, with Maura Mitchell, who helped us create some, scenarios for moving forward. And one of the scenarios was everything gets back to normal. And the other scenario was everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And we can both plan around that. I can plan around both of those things indefinitely. But what happens if everything just stays exactly the same as it is for another year? I think it affects us psychologically, emotionally, financially. So to me, that's the worst thing that can happen to our industry, is that we just continue to muddle along without any level of certainty. Small businesses are resilient. Small businesses can weather anything. What small businesses are not good at is uncertainty. You don't know whether to invest, hire. Our biggest opportunity is creating new relationships with our customers. Trust, permission-based, confidence-based relationships. Get out of the procurement business. You know, right now, I know that our industry in some ways feels like we're kind of in that uncertain fetal position, you know, of like, when this thing ends, I'm going to come out. But you have to remember that your customers are feeling exactly the same way. This is not a pandemic of our industry. This is a pandemic of our economy, as well as the health side of it. Your customers need you now more than ever. They don't know how to buy promotional. Look, when they knew how to buy a promotional product, when they knew they wanted promotional products in a regular economy, they knew exactly where to go. They can go online, they could source around us, they could shop around. Today, they don't know what they need to help them get through this and engage their employees and engage their customers. That's an opportunity for us. So build those relationships now, get out of the procurement business. There will be less distributors in this industry at the end of this pandemic. There will be. Here's your opportunity to reshape your business in a way that adds value that you might not have ever seen in our lifetimes or in our careers.
Thanks. Okay, what do you see as the future of PPAI over the next 5 years?
Oh boy. So I got on a call on Monday night with the 9 out of the 10 chair people that I have served with as CEO. I've been with the organization for 20 years. Was on a Zoom call with them on Monday night prior to the announcement, letting them know. And I had the ability to thank each of them for what they brought to the organization that will help us weather and sustain through this. And whether it was somebody saying, you know, we need to move our reliance away from live events. Well, we created a SAGE relationship, right? That gave us day-to-day visibility and viability outside of a live event. And that's grown our membership. I've had other chairs who have said, you know, we need to invest in regional associations. And the fact that I could be here with you and be supportive of OPA and do those things and count on you to maybe help engage the members in ways that I used to, there was that thank you. There was the ones that said, you know, we need to put more money in our reserves so that we have a longer runway should something go wrong. So I would tell you that PPAI has more than 2 years. If we change nothing about the organization from this move forward, we have more than 2 years of reserves. Now, obviously, we're not going to just keep doing this and run out 2 years. We'll have live events again. We'll find different ways to add value. So I am optimistic about PPAI. I would also say that PPAI has a focus of informing, educating, and advocating, and I think we'll do those differently. We will reapproach how we do each of those things in a post-pandemic marketplace, and that's not a bad thing. So it goes to why I am leaving the organization. And I didn't want to go into this side of it, but I think that sometimes new opportunities are blurry to older eyes, right? I will see this. I will see PPAI. Look, we are the same size today as it was when I joined the association 20 years ago. About a $15 million industry, 40 to 60 staff, $15 million association. In January, we were a $27 billion industry with 80 staff and a $25 million budget. Fresh eyes will look at these opportunities different than I will, for certain. So for me personally, over the last 9 months, we've made incredibly difficult decisions that I think have positioned us to move forward. I think the association has what it needs right now to move forward, and a fresh set of eyes will again, it's not our first pandemic. It's not our first, I'm not your first CEO. It's bigger than me. And I think that the association has a bright future.
Okay. Do you foresee any major changes to the existing supplier distributor model as we emerge from the current crisis?
So there are things that have accelerated and there are things that have decelerated. So, Cassandra, let's look at this from your association standpoint. I know we've always talked about hybrids. We need to do more things hybrid to get more people engaged. And how do you get people engaged who can't travel and blah, blah, blah. Do you know that this has accelerated us like 5 years forward into the future? And
For sure.
it would have taken us 5 years to get to where we are. And there are so many things about this pandemic that has made us better about how we move. And some of them are incredibly non-traditional. But in terms of our distribution channel, I think it's moved us 5 years backwards. It's reinforced the value of a supplier distributor channel because I'm going to tell you, distributors aren't going direct and suppliers don't have the means to get out and see customers directly and they're not reaching. So I think that as if we can get out of the procurement business where people are just buying and selling stuff and move into the value business, I believe that this pandemic has reinforced the value of our channel. Believe that wholeheartedly without reservation. We're counting
Okay.
on each other more.
I'm going to flip, since we're running out of time, to a little bit of some lighthearted questions. What has been your favorite promo product that you've received during your years in the industry?
I'm a backpack guy. I've loved receiving backpacks. Did we have somebody from Logomark on the call? Did I hear? Or somebody on your board from Logomark? They
Megan
came into
Hernandez.
Megan. So they came into the office in December, this past December, and did their sales meeting, and they were showing some new product, and they left it in the office. They actually used our office, and they left some product in the conference room. And I actually stole one of their prototype bags that they didn't even know it. I let Trevor Neeson know it like weeks later. I said, I know you're missing one of those really cool solo bags that you had. I stole it. And so I am a backpack guy. I am like our customers. I will steal a good promotional product if it's sitting out there. Megan, you can report that back. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to hit her up for a new backpack.
Yep.
Okay, here's the next one. Will we see you again in the promo industry?
I don't know. I have 3 choices to make. I've been asked this question a bunch. I am in the association management industry. I'm a hired gun for associations that need to be managed. So that could be pivot choice number 1. I fell in love with this industry, and I know that I have friends and opportunities here too. So that could be pivot choice number 2. Or my third choice is I'm fortunate enough to have this choice. I may take a gap year. I may like go back to my college days and just say, gee, the only problem with taking a gap year is I have no place to go. I'll be driving around Texas and Florida, the only 2 places that aren't acknowledging that there's a pandemic. So I don't know, but I have friends and opportunities in both.
Okay, I'm going to try to squeeze one more in here. Trade shows were already on the decline prior to the pandemic. Most associations heavily rely financially on trade shows. With the industry now more familiar with virtual experiences, how do you see that impacting trade shows long term? Do you see them going away, more virtual experiences?
I don't see
or
them
do you
go.
see a hybrid?
I'm a hybrid guy. I've always been a hybrid guy about everything. Think about every new technology that's been brought to the table in the last 20 years. None of them have gone away. It didn't replace anything. It's become very additive. I think the day of getting 25,000 people in a facility for a show, I think we have to have hybrid alternatives for those folks. I think they're going to be smaller, smarter, and hybrid. I think the day of the expo that we've known, 3,300 booths, 1,500 suppliers, 25,000 people. I don't know that that's going to ever be the same again. But I do know that your local events will be more impactful and more powerful. We're craving that personal connection. We are all zoomed out at this point. So there's something to be said for I run into people at the gym now, right? And you know, with Mark, and you're kind of like, hey, hi, a person I know. You know, it's like, you know, in the past it would have been like,
I was actually at the gym, so let's be honest.
me too. Yeah, but it was kind of like one of those, oh my God, a familiar face outside of a mask. This is amazing.
Yeah, I still haven't had my mask on though.
Yeah, so yeah, I think there'll always be a role for them.
Well, thank you so much. It was good talking with you. It was good hearing you. It was good seeing you. Mark, I'm going to turn it back over to you now. And for the questions that didn't get answered, I can send those over to Paul and see if he can answer you directly after this.
Sounds great. And you can have this presentation. I'll send it over to Cassandra. I'll put it in a PDF format. You can have it, you can use it, but don't use it as like your guidepost. Use it as a baseline. Everything gets better from here. I'm going to jump off, guys. Thank you.
Paul, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Paul.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Well, thank you to all our members for your ongoing support of PPAS. We appreciate all of you guys. Again, without your support, we wouldn't be where we are, and we definitely need a more focused approach next year with everybody and your support. So spread the word. We do have a couple of announcements. Typically this time of the year, we always had a nice holiday bash. Unfortunately, that is not going to happen again. Not going to happen this year, based on the numbers being picked up again, and it didn't seem prudent to gather for that. We're all disappointed, but you know, it is what it is. We waited as long as possible to try to make it happen, but we just couldn't do it. But what I will say, the Love Our Industry show. You guys can come see your favorite suppliers at the Love Our Industry show on March 3rd at the Grapevine Convention Center. Registration is free for distributors, and of course, we'll be following all the necessary protocols to keep everyone safe. And so be sure to, from a supplier perspective, sign up for that quickly. Since we are doing the protocol, we have to separate tables, so we're not going to have as many tables available. So be sure to jump on that as soon as possible to make sure you get your spot. That's all I have, guys. Happy holidays. Hopefully all you guys finish your year strong, and look forward to seeing you guys as soon as possible.
All right, I'm going to add one thing real quick. This is my fault, Mark. I didn't give it to you, but we have rescheduled our golf tournament that was originally scheduled for May of 2020. That is on the books for June 18th of 2021. That is an end user event. So for the distributors on the call, bring your end users and let's come out and play some golf.
Always a good time, guys. Have a great year. See you guys.
Thank you, everyone.